Hi, everybody. It's Professor Couture with what I hope is going to be helpful to you and resolve some confusion that we can get cleared up, which is a good thing to do always. It's especially good because going forward for the rest of this semester, most all of your homework will be involving case exercises that will require you to complete one of the case exercise worksheets. So it's important that I clarify, I show you, I've reorganized some materials, and I'm hopeful that you will find this user-friendly. And so let's get started. All right, so we're going to start in Canvas. You, I believe, do see my Canvas screen, and I'm going to, let's see, what am I going to do? I'm going to change to student view so that I'm showing it the way you see it. When you get to when you reach your Canvas homepage and you go to modules, which is typically where you all are going anyway, remember that you can click on the little arrows to minimize materials that you aren't particularly interested in, or for example, we finished with chapter 1, so you can close that by clicking on when the arrow's downward facing, as shown here. If you click on it, it will collapse. So the textbook obviously is here, always as the first item in the readings and videos section. We will be looking at the textbook as I take you along this journey. All of the homework for Chapter 2 is now posted and available in Chapter 2 modules. You will be pleased to know that the mystery as to why assignments were duplicating had to do with the directions that I was provided and followed, that was creating duplicates both in the assignment and then duplicating into modules. I've removed all of those. I've clarified and taken them all out. So each of the case exercises you will only thankfully be getting notification of and links to one link per homework. Moreover, I'm going to take you into homework number 13 just to show you how things are. Actually, I'm going to show you in homework 14 how things are now organized. So within each homework assignment, I have included the instructions. I have also included the forms you need to complete it, and as well a model case exercise answer, which I'm going to show you momentarily. So again, each homework that has a case exercise attached to it will appear in the modules for the chapter in which it's due. When you open it, you will see instructions, a step-by-step analysis, elements of a crime, and then a model answer, which, as I previously mentioned, I'll be sharing with you. All of the homework in Chapter 2, with the exception of homework number 16, involves completing a step-by-step analysis of a homicide crime and completion of an elements of a crime worksheet. Once we move into Chapter 3, the setup will be the same. However, since we will finish with homicides in Chapter 2, your materials that you will need to complete case exercises in Chapters 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 will only involve a worksheet of some sort. It may be in elements of a crime, it may be elements of a crime and defenses, and in Chapter 10 it will be parties to crime as well, identifying who the parties are, first principles in the first degree, second degree, accessories before the fact and after the fact. So here's case exercise number 7, which is homework number 14, and it calls for you to, again, the purpose is for you to get some practice in differentiating between innocent and criminal homicides once there's a determination that it is a criminal homicide, then distinctions between murder and manslaughter, first degree and second degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, and vehicular homicide. So the instructions are to complete the step-by-step analysis, to use the elements of a crime worksheet, and to review the model answer. Okay, so the model answer that I'm going to share with you is from homework number 13, case exercise number 6, problem number 1. And we did go over this in class, in our last class on Thursday. The problem is Pat hates Phil. She decides to kill him. She picks up a knife and stabs Phil twice, killing him. That's all the facts we have. We're going to be I'm going to show you the step-by-step analysis that is required in the homicide cases. This is the model answer that I'm showing with, and I will also show you a completed elements of crime worksheet that you will have available as a model for each of the case exercises in chapter 2. Okay, let's see. All right, first question. Let's see. So we have the question. Pat hates Phil. She decides to kill him. She picks up a knife and stabs him. It will be critically important to use the step-by-step analysis form that I've provided to you in order to get to the correct answer rather than simply guessing. Oh yeah, this has got to be murder, or yeah, this has got to be voluntary manslaughter. There's no need to guess. Well, we cannot be 100% certain that a jury would agree with our analysis and convict. We certainly can make more than a guess and, in fact, go through a deliberate process to answer the questions that will lead us to the likely best correct answer. So this is a completed step-by-step analysis. Is there a homicide? Yes. Phil is dead. Is it innocent or criminal? An innocent homicide is when a person takes the life of another. So there's a homicide. There's a person who's died not by natural causes or by accident or by self-harm, but at the hands of another person. However, some killings of other people are considered non-criminal because of a justification or excuse defense, which we will cover in Chapter 8. Those include insanity, which in Massachusetts we call lack of criminal responsibility, the use of lethal force in self-defense or defense of another, battered person syndrome, and we'll look at the role of involuntary intoxication when someone doesn't realize that what they're taking is an intoxicating alcohol or drugs, and then act and commit a crime. The law treats involuntary intoxication different than voluntary intoxication, which is, oh yeah, I know I was, smoking pot. I was throwing down Jack Daniel's shots. I did a few tablets of Xanax or whatever, and then I committed the crime. But you can't blame me because I did that. The law does not recognize voluntary intoxication as a defense to crime. So on these facts, there's nothing here to suggest, and you can't add to it for the time being. At a later point, when you get a little more comfortable, you might decide, you could speculate if this happened, then it would be whatever. But for right now, we're sticking just to the four corners of the assigned problem. So then we move on. Is there the next question, the third question in the step-by-step analysis is it murder or manslaughter? Please understand, you cannot answer that question if you have not read and understood the textbook. So this slide shows you where in the textbook you would find the information that you need in order to answer the question, is there or is there not malice on the facts as they've been presented in this case. So as indicated on the PowerPoint slide, we're at question C, is it murder or manslaughter? To answer that question, we're going to look in the textbook, read the material, and understand it well enough to not guess, but to make an informed selection as to whether there's malice aforethought or not. The side-by-side comparison of first-degree murder, either by deliberate premeditation, first-degree murder with extreme atrocity or cruelty, or first-degree felony murder, starts at the very end of page 15. All three of those types of murder, three different types of first-degree murder, share in common the first element, the criminal act, is a homicide. The defendant caused the death of the victim of a crime, at least in the first two. And we're going to hold and talk about first-degree felony murder in a different case exercise. The second element in both first-degree murder with deliberate premeditation and first-degree murder with extreme atrocity or cruelty is the element of malice aforethought. So malice aforethought is the criminal intent element in the crime of first-degree murder. There are three different ways, three different types of malice aforethought that suffice for fulfilling that second requirement that must be proven beyond a reasonable doubt by the prosecution in any first-degree murder case. So malice aforethought can be shown by specific intent to kill, a conscious and purposeful intention to cause the victim's death. That's a type of specific intent. The second is specific intent to cause serious or grievous bodily injury or severe injury. That is also specific intent. And the third type of the third way that malice can be demonstrated in a first-degree murder case or a second-degree murder case is that the defendant intended to do an act which, in the circumstances known to the defendant, and a reasonable person would have known, created a strong and plain likelihood that the result would occur. And that is a type of general intent which does suffice as the third prong or the third way of establishing malice aforethought, which, as I said, is the second element in first-degree murder. It is also the second element in second-degree murder. What you will see when we move to second-degree murder, which I will do here in a moment, there are only two elements to second-degree murder: a homicide, which is the same as the first element in first-degree murder, and malice aforethought, which is the same second element in first-degree murder. If all the prosecution can prove is those two things, then the likelihood that that's all they need to prove to get a conviction of second-degree murder. There is no deliberate premeditation or extreme atrocity or cruelty required in second-degree murder. So I want to just flip back here to the discussion of malice aforethought, and let's see. Malice aforethought, as described in the chart that I just showed you, three different ways that malice can be demonstrated. Please note that the use of a dangerous weapon, which is in play in this case, insofar as Pat used a knife. A knife is a dangerous weapon. It is not a dangerous weapon per se. It wasn't designed maybe to be a dangerous weapon, but it can be used as such depending upon what the kind of knife is. If it's a hunting knife or a cutting knife, it is considered a dangerous weapon. But even things that are not designed to be used as weapons may be considered a dangerous weapon for purposes of analyzing a homicide case. And under Massachusetts law, in a 2011 case, the Supreme Judicial Court in Massachusetts, by way of common law court decision, allowed a jury instruction to a first-degree murder jury deciding a first-degree murder case, allowing the judge to inform the jury that they could infer, draw an inference, draw a logical conclusion that a person who intentionally uses a dangerous weapon, such as a knife, as Pat did, either intended to kill Phil or intended to cause him serious bodily harm, or intended to do an act which, in the circumstances known to Pat, a reasonable person would know creates a plain and strong likelihood that death would occur. So the presence of that knife helps the prosecution establish malice aforethought, either by specific intent to cause death, specific intent to cause grievous injury, or intent to do an act which, under the circumstances, a reasonable person knows created a plain and strong likelihood of death. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about here? Okay, we just talked about that. As I previously mentioned, malice aforethought by one of those three ways is a required second element in both first and second degree murder. So this is really just a recitation, a repeat of what I just went over with a little more detail added in. So you are expected, and in fact you cannot really, unless you're extremely lucky, guess the right answer, and even if you do guess the right answer, you won't be able to provide the supporting evidence if you're not relying upon reading, understanding, and relying upon the information which is in the textbook. So this is all information on pages 21 to pages 23 that covers malice aforethought. So, having determined that there is malice aforethought by either specific intent to kill stated in the facts, Pat intended to kill Phil, or specific intent to do serious bodily injury supported by the fact that she stabbed him twice, or the third prong of malice, or the third way to prove malice, is that the defendant, in this case Pat, acted with knowledge of the likelihood of death or serious bodily harm, and in fact the use of a dangerous weapon, in this case a knife, creates the inference of malice, and that is all explained in the textbook on the pages that are noted here. There is, and it bears repeating, you cannot do a good job by guessing. You have to read the textbook and think about it. And this is a great time for me to remind you of the importance of having a printed copy of the textbook. If you have the textbook on your desk or wherever you are working on your homework assignments, you will be in far better shape than trying to navigate between screens on your computer to find the textbook, the glossary, and complete the homework assignment. So I strongly, in the strongest way that I can, suggest that you would be well advised to print out each chapter as we come to it, have it on your desk, use it when you're doing your homework. You can also use it when you take your exam, and I'm going to bet that it's a lot easier to take an open book exam when you've got the textbook in paper in front of you. All right, so moving on. The next question is, we move, as the answers tell us, we move to the next screen, which is, in order to determine, having determined that there is a criminal homicide, that there is malice aforethought, we now have to determine, is there first-degree murder, first-degree felony murder, or second-degree murder? So for it to be first-degree felony murder, the homicide, Phil's death, would have had to occur during the commission of another crime, which is punishable under state law for imprisonment by life. That's called a capital felony. So there's a whole list here of Massachusetts crimes which, if a killing occurs during the course of, as that one of those crimes is being completed, then there is likely going to be a charge of first-degree felony murder. But in the facts as we have them, there's no other crime going on here. Pat just decides she's going to kill him and takes a knife and stabs him. So the answer is, was this homicide during the commission or attempted commission, of a crime punishable by life? The answer is no. So we move on to the next part B of this question. Was the homicide committed with deliberate premeditation? Again, you can't answer that question yes or no, and you certainly cannot provide supporting evidence if you do not read and rely upon the textbook. The answer is, if you had done the reading, as I've done the reading, there is deliberate premeditation. There are some lengthy explanations and some examples given in the textbook of what constitutes deliberate premeditation. It doesn't take much. It's a momentary clear thought, a moment when there is not heat of passion and adequate provocation. If Pat had been jumped by Phil and was in the heat of passion and the provocation was he jumped her and she pulled out a knife, that would dramatically change the circumstances in the case and would possibly eviscerate deliberate premeditation. And if we see a killing that has occurred in heat of passion with adequate provocation, then we may be looking at manslaughter instead of murder. However, Pat was not acting in the heat of passion. There was no reasonable provocation. She had the requisite amount of time, it's momentary, to form a clear intent, and her action of stabbing him was the product of cool reflection, however momentary, not a decision that was made in the heat of passion with some provocation. So we've answered yes to part B of question D. So therefore we have the three things we need for this form of first-degree murder. A criminal homicide with malice aforethought and deliberate premeditation. A second way that first-degree murder can be established is the third element is extreme atrocity or cruelty. So the taking of the life of another human being with malice aforethought and either deliberate premeditation or extreme atrocity or cruelty does constitute first-degree murder. There will be some cases that you will work on where extreme atrocity and cruelty may be in play, and you'll have to examine that and understand what extreme atrocity and cruelty is in order to correctly answer that question. But it's not present on the case that we have before us. All right. So we've determined, having gone through the step-by-step analysis, that Pat can be charged with and possibly found guilty of first-degree murder with deliberate premeditation. So we're not going to look at voluntary or involuntary manslaughter. We don't need to do that. The question didn't ask you to look at all of the possibilities. It asked you to look at which was the type of homicide that you would select. Moving on, again, questions F and G do not apply. There was no homicide committed with a motor vehicle, so that those questions do not apply. That having been said, the step-by-step analysis of homicide crimes will be used in all of the homicide case exercises, and you will have homicide exercises on felony murder, on the second type of first-degree murder, on voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, and vehicular homicide. In each of those, you will not be eligible for full credit on the answers to the case exercises if you do not complete the step-by-step analysis and show me your work. Okay, the second part of all of these homicide assignments is after you've done the step-by-step analysis, is to complete an elements of crime worksheet. I have done that, and the elements of the crime worksheet and the step-by-step analysis is embedded in each case exercise in Chapter 2. So once you've clicked on the case exercise in the modules, you will find all the materials you need, including the elements of a crime worksheet, which will be blank as it is here. So moving on, I'm moving to the completed elements of a crime worksheet. Anything that's in red is the information that I added. Again, the blank elements of a crime worksheet is right in your case exercise assignment for case exercises 14, 15, 17, and 18. So I've identified Pat is the defendant, first-degree murder, the statutory reference, which is in the textbook, and where I got all my information, what pages from the textbook. As I move through the form, the elements of first-degree murder are listed in the textbook. You're not making them up. You're not shortcutting them. You're taking them directly from the textbook, which is what I have done here. So we have a homicide. That's the first element. And that is the criminal act. It's the commission. It's doing something the law prohibits, taking the life of another human being. We have malice aforethought, which is the criminal intent element of the crime of first-degree murder or second-degree murder as well. Malice can be demonstrated in one of three ways. We get the help from the use of a deadly weapon results in an inference that any person who uses a deadly weapon has malice aforethought. And then our third element is the deliberate premeditation, which we just covered. You will see so these elements come from the textbook. They are what the government must prove as the criminal act and criminal intent. Of course, they also will have to prove concurrence of act and intent, which will be easy to do because the facts tell you that Pat intended to kill Phil, took out a knife, and stabbed him twice. And causation, legal causation is not an issue here. There's no issue that the cause of Phil's death is being stabbed twice by Pat. On the right-hand column, you see that I have taken the facts from the short fact pattern in this case exercise and used them as what I am showing you and what you need to show me when you complete a case exercise worksheet. How do we know there's a homicide? Phil is dead, not as a result of accident, illness, or taking his own life, but as a result of the criminal conduct of Pat. There's malice aforethought, as we've already discussed above. The information that you use when you prepare that step-by-step analysis can be used again here. Pat decides to kill Phil using a knife. She stabs him twice. Certainly, depending upon where she stabbed him, which we do not know in this case, but stabbing him in the heart, in the jugular, in the carotid artery, those would strengthen the case, but they're not necessary. Just stabbing somebody twice is malice aforethought if a knife is used or a other dangerous weapon is used. Deliberate premeditation, as we've already covered, and again, I'm taking this is actually copy, cut, and pasted right out of what I answered in the step-by-step analysis. She decided to kill him. She thought about it, however, momentarily, and her decision was made during a period of cool reflection and not in the heat of passion. So that's what the government needs to prove for the criminal act and the criminal intent. These are the facts from the case that and the benefit of the inference of the use of a dangerous weapon, and that's what we have. We got her. We got her. Okay, the end of the case exercise worksheet. Each case exercise has its own blank worksheet that you need to complete, and at the conclusion you will see that you need to specifically identify what is the type of the criminal act. In this case, it was a commission. Explain your answer. If you just circle commission, you haven't explained your answer. Taking the life of another human being is the act which was prohibited by law that Pat did. We've demonstrated both specific intent to kill, specific intent to do serious bodily injury, as well as general intent because of the knowledge, or she should have had the knowledge, a reasonable person would have had the knowledge of the plain and strong likelihood of causing the death or serious bodily harm by stabbing someone twice. All right, so as you go forward, you're going to use the same recipe. The instructions, the process, the forms you use will be identical in case exercise 7, 8, 9, and 10, which are case exercise 14, 15, 17, and 18. So case exercise 14, when you open it, you will see whatever team you have been assigned to, whatever letter team you've been assigned to, that indicates what problem you have to do. For those of you who are choosing not to read, and you're completing all of the problems that are assigned to everyone in the class, that's certainly not necessary, but that's up to you to read and follow instructions. And so many of you have been completing more homework than you were assigned because you haven't read the directions. Hopefully this will be a helpful reminder of why you need to do that. Okay, so the instructions in case exercise 7, which is homework number 14, which is what you're going to do next, is the same. Follow the step-by-step analysis, complete it, analyze it, complete it. Review the model answer that I just went over with you, which you will find embedded in the assignments for homework 14, 15, 17, and 18. And make sure that you read, because if you don't read, you're not going to find the supporting evidence that you need. Okay, and so case exercise 7, problem 1 involves a rape before a death. I'm going to give you a clue. This is not going to be, I'm not going to give you a clue. You will get the right answer if you use the step-by-step analysis, and if I spell it correctly. The same with problem number 2 and the same with problem number 3. You are only assigned one of those problems. So please do the one that you've been assigned. For next class, you're going to finish homework 14 if you've already started it. You are going to do case exercise number 15, and you're going to make a list of 2 questions. So that's where we end on that. Hopefully this has been helpful. You're going to get lots of practice. The procedure is the same. The forms will, when we move into chapter 3, you'll only have elements of a crime worksheet because we won't be doing an analysis of homicide crimes. We will have left chapter 2. All right, I hope this is helpful, and if not, if you have questions, please reach out to me. I'm happy to help. Thank you.